Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. My name is Catherine Tindall, and today we've got Carolyn from FICOM Partners with us. She is a VP of Consulting and Innovation at FICOM. She's the lead consultant within the FICOM's Advisor Accelerator. She lives with her husband and two kids in a Boston suburb, so not too far from me. I'm up in New Hampshire right now. And she's on LinkedIn. We got connected because of some content that she was doing and then the work that she does with FICOM. I wanted to invite her onto the show to have a conversation all about social media, marketing, things that she's been seeing working with advisors and, trends for 2025. So thanks for joining me on the show today, Carolyn.
Thanks for inviting me on, Catherine. I am overjoyed at any opportunity to connect with advisors and help out.
Yeah. So in the pre-show, we were talking about social media, and you had a really interesting statistic that I had not heard before, which is you were saying that vast majority of advisors out there don't produce content on social media. What was that figure that you dropped?
Yeah, it's more than 90% of just consumers in general. So all of us people online, so much of what these platforms are seeing is we go to them, but very few people actually create on them. So it can differentiate you if you're one of the voices that's sharing your point of view on social.
Yeah. And so I often am encountering advisors, in my own practice where I can see that they're not doing anything with social media. And so for those that are interested in doing that, I've seen, just talking to a number of people through this show and just in general, the benefits of, once you have a niche and once you have, a specific target audience to share with, really getting on social media can really kickstart what you're doing because it's easier to find people. But for advisors who are flirting with actually, not just okay, we're going to post like picture, a picture here, a picture there on social media, or we did this event or did that event, but actually take it seriously. Where do you think they should start? What are things that you've seen work for advisors and, your best tips for them?
Yeah, happy to go into social. I think it's such an important conversation, and we've heard about social media so often, but really the trend is headed more and more into these online platforms. At FICOM, we recommend all advisors use LinkedIn as a starting point, and most compliance offices that advisors work under permit it. So it's like, even in the data, it shows that it's like the most popular platform for advisors. And there's a way to think about it too. Sometimes the social media conversation gets into like, oh, just how often, and we can get there. Like, how often should I be posting? What should I be posting about? But if we look at it strategically, social media serves as essentially a validation touch point. So today's consumer goes online to validate. Even if they hear your name from a referral or they meet you in real life, before they sign with you, they're likely going to Google you. And they're going to see, what is this person all about? Are they legitimate? What is their background? What is their style, right? Because they, kind of maybe met with you once, but really what's going on here? So social media should absolutely be seen as that part of the marketing experience. There are times it might serve like awareness building, or you might have a post that gets seen by a lot of people, but that's actually not the goal in this industry. You have to look at it strategically from the moment that your prospect is going to validate you and want to kind of get to know you. That's when they're going to go online. That's really when they're going to scroll your feed and watch videos or read posts that you've created. So it's important to position social media as the appropriate vehicle that it's really serving today.
Yeah, I really like that because on a previous episode, another marketing expert was sharing that, when they did a big survey of their advisor base and just advisors in general, they were finding that over 80% of new business for advisors was coming from referrals. And so that really rings true with the point that you make of, I think there's kind of the two, for most advisors, most of the time, it's that validation point from somebody that's hearing about you rather than you using it as a primary vehicle to drive forward new business. Though I've seen people, especially like on LinkedIn, where they have a specific niche, they are using it to drive active, like new engagement versus just being that validation point. But for any advisor listening to this, that validation point is just true. Whether you like it or not, that's true. But then
Mhm.
if you decide to be more proactive with it, is that something that you recommend advisors do? Or like, what are your thoughts on kind of what I'm starting to see as a newer trend of people really trying to use social media to drive like new engagement and use it more as like a prospecting source rather than just a validation point?
Mm. Yeah, so to drive prospects, right? So new eyes. If you want your content online to get a completely new set of eyes, then you really want to look at what is your ideal client searching.
Hmm.
And so you need to think about what questions are they entering into search, Google, but also YouTube. YouTube is the second most popular search engine for folks, especially upcoming generations of wealth. And so we want to think, what are they searching? And let's create loads of content for those topics. Because the moment you connect with them first might be on one specific thing, even though you're, holistic advice and full financial planning across topics. Know and be aware of that first moment and create to specifically address it so that they then say, oh, that was interesting. Who is this person? And then they're going to dig in. Then they're going to go to the website and see your LinkedIn and all that. But you really have to think about search engines if you want it to drive awareness. But something interesting you just mentioned too, Catherine, is this statistic that most prospects will say, I'm a referral. It's also important, though, when this is super actionable for every advisor out there. If you're asking prospects, where did you hear about us? They might say referral, but a great question is also, where have you seen us?
Mm.
Because then they'll say, well, my buddy mentioned you and I went on your website and I actually, binged your YouTube show and listened to your podcast interview with so-and-so. And it gives you a bigger picture of the impact of all the different things you've tried.
Yeah.
This is why I always say, when you look at the data, all these reports come out, they're like, here's where leads are coming from. The problem with that data is because it's looking at one moment of their experience. And so they'll say referral, but the truth is all of your hours creating content made a big impact on them. So always look at that kind of data with a critical eye, and don't stop your content because you think, oh, it's just all referrals anyway. It all plays in. There's no linear, experience.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And that's something I've observed in my own practice is that when people have been a referral, they've already looked up different things that I do or this, that, and the other. And by the time they get to me, I can tell that they've been a nurtured lead. Like they already understand what we do.
Yeah.
Like they already have, they seem like they know me more than they actually know me because they've been watching the content versus, that initial interaction. So that's definitely true. In terms of like content generation, because I think that's where a lot of advisors get stuck sometimes, is like, okay, well, what do I actually do? And not go run afoul of my compliance, because that's the other,
Right.
I think, excuse that I think people will make to not make any content. Do you have any like top recommendations of how they can go about that process of figuring out, what they need to be saying and maybe some actionable tips there?
So many ways to talk about this. I think I could help someone for hours and hours on this point alone. The bottom lines here, I'll try to hit on a few. When you go to create content on social media, a fantastic place to start, maybe for the first year or 18 months, create for clients.
Hmm.
What are your clients asking about? What is coming up in the calendar that they should be thinking about? You can speak directly to clients through your social media content. And if you create for your top clients, could attract people like them as well.
Hmm.
So just create for your top clients and put it on these public channels. When you're worried about compliance, that is absolutely part of our industry, and it's an important part of our industry. So in that lens, and to touch there's so much that can be said and shared that isn't direct advice or talked about even in the investment side of the work at all.
Hmm.
These platforms, if you look at the environment on these platforms, so much of it is about life and human connection and reassurance and sharing resources, or talking about what your week has looked like, or reminding them of, these kind of best practices in how they behave coming up, right? So avoiding investment recommendations is fairly easy if you look at, okay, I'm going to serve my client as a human, and I'm going to be like more of a community here. And at the end of the video, I will say, call me so that we can discuss your exact report that we just emailed out to everyone this week, right? Like you can move your social media into the one-on-one format for those more tailored conversations that are also where you want to be from a compliance standpoint. But create for your clients, and then look at it from a whole human lens. It doesn't need to be about the tactics. It can be a lot about life and your point of view.
That's great. That's great feedback. Something too that I've noticed that's really helped me in my journey of doing this has been making some investments into decent equipment setups so that it's really easy for me to turn the camera on, and really easy for me to just, like, I was just in the middle of a project and it was making me frustrated. And I was like, you know what? I should share this frustration that I'm having because other people should hear this. And it took me 2 seconds to get the mic up and get the camera on and just go for it. And I think that can be maybe a helpful side tip I've noticed in practice too, of just, if you figure out what you're going to need to get something that you're minimally comfortable with in terms of like production quality, which is not very much, right? Like a cell phone actually shoots really good quality video for the most part. That's pretty engaging. So like, do you need to just get a little remote mic and maybe a light, or
Yeah.
something small to just make it easy to, like, say, opt into the opportunity for yourself? It's like putting the running shoes next to the door kind of a thing. Um, I've found that to be really helpful personally. What are some areas that you've seen advisors really struggle when it comes to social media? Like, what are some of the common, pitfalls or mindset blocks or things that you've noticed advisors have to not engage this? Hey there, Catherine here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Just wanted to explain a little more about what we do. So, I'm a CPA here with Dominion. We're a tax firm that works specifically for financial advisors as they're growing and scaling their practices to help them avoid tax waste, make the right calls, and grow practices that they love. So, if you're interested in saving more, you can DM me on LinkedIn with the word guide, and I'll send you over our guide for financial advisors to scale tax efficiently, all my top tips to unlock six-figure savings. Thanks, and keep enjoying the show.
Mm. I see them all the time. I'm very much boots on the ground with the advisors in our accelerator, and that's a year-long experience, right? So we see the highs, we see the lows, we see the ongoing realities. The number one struggle is accountability, or being consistent, like basically
Mm,
actually doing the work. The first couple months of accelerator are highly focused on strategy, right? You have to have that as your foundation, and then it really comes into like ongoing consistency and, yeah, iterating based on insights and feedback. But the core challenge is showing up, creating it, posting it with consistency. But the fascinating thing too is I'm wrapping up a cohort of the accelerator right now, and some of the top performers in that cohort are saying the thing that has changed to drive all of our results is how incredibly consistent we are now. So if you set a cadence for, I'm going to be on LinkedIn twice a week. If you say that, do it for a year to 18 months, and that will be the hardest part, is showing up.
yeah. No, I've noticed that really, especially as you're growing a practice and juggling so many other things, and when there's so many other fires that are going on, to say, "Oh, I'm going to stop I'm going to stop dealing with this fire right now and work on planting this seed for the thing that's going to grow a year from now." It's
Right.
just a really hard call to do that, and especially if you're dealing with things where it's like, this is a direct revenue opportunity that I'm dealing with, or this is a direct, like, this is an expense that's going to hit my P&L. I got to sort out this hire or whatever it is, to say, okay, no, I'm going to stop and do the thing that's planting the tree for myself for the future. It's hard. What are some successful strategies you've seen advisors deploy in getting around that consistency difficulty Is it bring on team members? Like how do you recommend people actually embed that accountability? So it's like with working out or something, right? Like forces you to get to the gym. Like how do you get people to overcome that like inertia barrier or distraction barrier that stops consistency?
Mm-hmm. It's different for every situation, right? It's like, how big is the firm? What's the budget? What's the time you're willing to invest in your growth? But if I try to zoom out and have the most applicable specifics, I would say having one person who is accountable, one name, right? So it might not even be the person who's creating the content,
Mm-hmm.
but who is the person that is like, this has to be posted every Thursday morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And that is your accountability. So one name really helps. And then also team buy-in at every level. So if your team, it's like maybe the founders are the face of the firm and they are the ones creating it. But those founders, maybe their calendars are absolutely loco, right? And so having team buy-in that we do not block over this time, like content creation time on their calendar is as sacred as a top client meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to have the respect across the team.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, say it's the team itself is creating content, leadership needs to have buy-in too, of like why the hours are being spent there and that it is absolutely valuable for the strategic long-term vision of the growth of the firm, right? So it's like, no matter who or what or how it's being created, respect of the time on the calendar is huge. And if you are a leader of a team, or even if you're solo, deploying any sort of like mastermind groups you have for added, accountability measures or cheerleading or brainstorming, right? Leveraging any sort of support around you to make sure that the time is respected and you feel like other people know what you're doing and that you have some sort of like support of around accountability itself.
Yeah, that's all really good feedback. And I think it's like the core of what I'm taking from what you're saying is it really has to be something that you've prioritized as a work item, like a top client meeting, that you build systems around it, that you build, responsibility around it. And I found, especially like in my experience doing this as a firm owner, my one of the biggest shifts that really helped me was that first tip that you gave, which is I gave this process to somebody else to own it, so that if I'm not keeping up for them, I'm held accountable to them versus trying to push things to the wayside because you've got so many fires going on. So realizing that even though you're going to be the voice in the content, that having somebody else actually be in charge of it on your team is going to keep you going to the gym, so to speak. For people who are interested in learning more about what you're doing in the accelerator program or what FICOM Partners is about, could you explain a little bit like how you guys work with advisors and what those programs involve?
For sure. Yeah, you can go to ficompartners.com or my LinkedIn page to kind of poke around a bit. But so the accelerator is a specific reaction to the needs of the industry. I've actually been doing very similar work along the accelerator for several years. Prior to FICOM, I was the in-house consultant for XY Planning Networks members. So I was serving over 1,600 advisors as the only in-house marketing coach and consultant. So what the accelerator is it's a way to drive organic advisor level growth at the enterprise scale. So it's intensive training, marketing support for cohorts of advisors. So right now, as we speak, it's being sold at the enterprise level. So we partner with RAAs who are looking to drive organic growth, and they want to tool their advisors as a growth channel. So we say, okay, we bring in cohorts of their advisors and we stick with them for 12 months. So as I mentioned earlier, it's like very deep dive into strategy at the beginning. So we partner with at the enterprise level. It's like, here's what the corporate brand might need, or how they're currently tooling advisors, and we understand the reality that they're in today, and then we are able to consult on that as well as bring it to the advisor level and create those environments where advisors can thrive. And my work in that is I'm with the advisors the whole year long. Other people from the team dip in and out based on what's going on, but it's really an immersive, intensive experience. Advisors are spending about 6 to 8 hours on their growth in the program a week. So it's an investment of time, but it's kind of the level of investment of time and money for the results to show through. And so some of that is also helpful for everyone, right? If you are a solopreneur running your own shop, I would recommend you're spending 6 to 8 hours on growth activities a week, and you are looking at it in a longer term, right? You're not judging something after 8 weeks of doing it. You are really strategically thinking about what you commit to in the beginning, and then you are dedicating your time to showing up for those vehicles and for that ideal prospect. So that's the quick overview of the accelerator, but it's consulting and also content. The advisors who are part of it get ongoing personalized content from FICOM to help supplement their own original content as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And it sounds like it's one of those programs where it's not a give a man a fish, but teach a man a fish. If it's really building the advisors up as individuals to be able to, take a really active role in what's going on with the growth. So that's wonderful. So for people who are looking to connect with Carolyn, wherever you're interacting with this online, there'll be a link to her LinkedIn profile where you can say hello, and also a link to some of the FICOM, activities that are going on. We'll put those there too. But I want to thank you again for joining me today, Carolyn. Do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Thank you, Catherine. I mean, I love this stuff. I very much enjoy helping advisors. And another thing I would add is I have an open advice column. So I host a video series on the FICOM YouTube page where advisors can write in with any question, and we create a video to answer it. So we can include a link to Dear FICOM for anyone who has a follow-up question or wants help with something they're thinking through. It's a really fun part of my job, creating those YouTube videos. So I'd welcome any questions from folks who are listening.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll put that link there as well. So thank you so much for joining me. And for those listening, I'm always interested in getting your direct feedback. So please send me a message. I'd love to hear what you think and thoughts for future episodes. But this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. Thanks for listening, and looking forward to have you join on a future episode.